Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot for being here right before the evening. Really excited to talk to you about how you can help manage your infrastructure better, but also lower your costs. My name is Vinay Janakoti. I lead product management for HP Simplicity and the software-defined storage for our HP storage portfolio. We'll try to run our session till about 45 minutes, and we want to leave some time for questions because we know you all have a lot of questions. So there's a mic there. Please walk up to the mic and ask your question so that we are able to answer your questions. Let's get started. As part of this presentation, we are also going to cover some forward-looking statements, so be cautious of that, and some confidential information. As we all know, the world is hybrid, but there's a lot of infrastructure still on our on-prem as a private cloud. 70% of our applications are still in data centers and cannot be moved to the public cloud. So the thing that we are seeing in the market is customers want to have a multi-hybrid cloud strategy. And as we are looking at the market change, there is more and more need with the whole evolution of AI that there is customers looking to move their infrastructure back to private cloud as well. So to help with this, there is ways that you need to better manage your infrastructure today and in the future. Now, managing private cloud infrastructure also comes with some complexity. You have multiple infrastructure. There is different resources that you have accumulated over a period of time, and you want an easy way to manage that infrastructure. And just like any organization, the goal is to figure out how do you do what you do with the lowest amount of cost. And you also want to have a way to avoid firefighting, a way that you can understand what's happening overall in your infrastructure so that you can better handle the problem and get to the resolution as fast as possible. And the beauty of what we have evolved over the period of time is we have diverse infrastructure. You need to have a way to manage your containers, your VMs, your applications in the most efficient manner. To help with this, we're going to talk about 5 different ways on how you can better manage your infrastructure and lower your costs. First, we'll take a look at how do you reevaluate infrastructure. How often do you guys look at what you're doing with your infrastructure on a periodic basis? With a raise of hands? Very few. The next thing is, all of you would need agility in your infrastructure and how you better manage on a day-to-day basis, as well as plan for the future. Next is, once you understand what is in your infrastructure and have an agility figured out, then you need to strategize on what is the best platform that you can have and the infrastructure that you can have to plan for everything that is coming in the future. As part of that effort, you need to figure out a way to modernize your infrastructure. Are there resources that are available? Are there technologies that are available that helps to set the stage for everything that you plan to do in the future, but also manage the growth and complexity that you will not envision currently, but be prepared for the future. And finally, you need to have a solution that will help you transform your current infrastructure to provide a solution that can help with years to come ahead. With a raise of hands, how many of you are familiar with cloud physics? Okay. If there's one takeaway from today, I would like all of you as customers, or if you're a partner, run cloud physics in your infrastructure, because it really helps you reevaluate all the resources that are available in your data center. First thing is, most of you have infrastructure that has been added or accumulated over a period of time for different application and business use cases. Now with that, you don't know how your VMware or your hypervisor licenses are being used. Cloud Physics provides a simple view to understand what are all the licenses that you're using in your infrastructure, as well as understand how many of those resources are being used. Next, you also have infrastructure, whether it's the hardware resources or the firmware versions that you have that can be old or underutilized. What this really helps is to help with VM right sizing. What do I mean by right sizing? When you start building an application in your infrastructure, you probably allocate more resources than needed. You don't know until you reevaluate that is that the amount of resources that I need. Using Cloud Physics, you can understand how you're using the resources that you have planned for and how much you can optimize your infrastructure moving forward. Once you reevaluate your infrastructure, then you can figure out how do you provide agility. What are the core principles of agility? First thing is, as customers and partners, we all have to have a way to easily set up our infrastructure, but also have a dashboard where you can understand how the infrastructure is performing, whether it's performance, latency, alerts, health of your infrastructure. This allows you to manage and monitor your infrastructure so that you can update, enhance, or upgrade your infrastructure so that you don't have to worry about problems in the future. Keeping your systems updated and understanding what problems are having your infrastructure will help you to make sure that your applications are always up and running and there is no downtime. Next, and the most important thing is, as we are looking at the diversity of the infrastructure, you need to have a way to easily deploy, manage, and also upgrade your infrastructure. Like I said before, the world is hybrid, and you have private cloud infrastructure and public cloud infrastructure. So what you all need now, or as time is evolving, is a hybrid cloud management platform, where you're able to manage both on-prem and also your public cloud VMs. To help with this, about 2 years back, we launched what is called HPE Private Cloud Business Edition. This really is the platform that helps customers to do a simple management console where you can do all your VM vending operations, but also have the ability to provide an integrated data protection for the resources that are protected underneath it, and an ability to do single click upgrades. Underneath the Private Cloud Business Edition platform, we have two core platforms that we support. First thing is the DHCI platform. The DHCI provided by our Alletra MP platform, which is really the future of HP storage, provides 100% availability and a way for customers to scale storage and compute independently. And then you also have Simplicity, which is a great infrastructure for edge use cases, where it's an all-in-one inclusive hyperconverged infrastructure, where it provides compute, storage, and also an integrated data production features and capabilities, with a two-node high availability resilience that customers can use for their edge and also for the data center use cases. And that's not enough. As part of Private Cloud Business Edition, we also have integrated our public cloud infrastructure, where customers can now manage both their AWS and Azure infrastructure right from the same pane of glass. All of you must have seen Antonio's keynote today. He really mentioned about the recent acquisition that we did, which is Morpheus. Morpheus is a great acquisition that will fuel everything that we are trying to do for our customers in the private cloud infrastructure, because Morpheus provides a great control plane so that customers can do infrastructure provisioning. And the infrastructure can be both your existing private cloud or also your public cloud. And on the private cloud, it provides support for all the hypervisors, whether it's Hyper-V, Red Hat, Nutanix, or even VMware. And then on the public cloud, it provides the ability to manage various clouds, all the way from AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, as well as Alibaba. And then as customers and partners are looking to have automation in their infrastructure, the beauty of the Morpheus platform is it has integration with all the automation tools, whether it's Ansible or Terraform, so that you can automate your overall infrastructure with ease and lot of ability to integrate other ISV partners as well. You know, data protection is very key for customers, and in this case, Morpheus already has integration to Veeam, Commvault, and Cohesity. So as a customer, as you onboard your both public and private cloud infrastructure, it really helps you to leverage the Morpheus control plane to data protect your infrastructure as well. And most of the customers also are looking at ways that you can do ITSM, such as integration with ServiceNow or BMC, and Morpheus provides all that, along with FinOps and other capabilities that helps our partners and also our service providers. So to help discuss further and what we are taking to help transform your infrastructure, I would like to invite Bharat Ram onto the stage.
All right, thank you, Vinay. Hello, everybody. Thanks for taking your time today. I'm going to continue Vinay's journey of the 5 points, but I want to first introduce myself. My name is Bharat Ram. I'm the Director of Product Management for Private Cloud. I also lead the virtualization product that we announced today. So as part of the rest of the presentation, I'll also be touching on a large portion of the virtualization product. Now, that being said, Vinay did summarize the Private Cloud Business Edition, right? And why it's important for us to understand these two platforms is that with even the new virtualization capability that we announced, a lot of the automation that we provide from the storage, compute, as well as the virtualization layer will be done with these platforms, right? Not just day zero operations of setup, but also upgrades, one-click updates across the stack will be provided through Private Cloud Business Edition. Now, as Vinay mentioned, with Alletra DHCI, we supported the 6,000s and the 5,000 arrays. We've now started supporting the Alletra MP, which is kind of very unique in the industry because it is one of the unique platforms that could basically disaggregate storage, meaning you could scale compute and storage independently. You could add controller nodes in single controller nodes, right? Let's say you start with 2. You could add another controller node and make it 3 and not have to be in pairs. So it's a very unique architecture that allows you to scale storage in different dimensions. Now, I just want to kind of touch on, because we looked at reevaluating and making our environment agile, but when you want to touch on strategize, right, with PCBE, with DHCI and SimpliVity, we've done some independent third-party analysis, right, on the overall cost of ownership that the customers go through. And in this independent study, what they did is they took an application workload. There was around 121 mixed workload VMs, and they ran it on a DHCI stack, and then they ran it on a similar VxRail configuration. Now, when you look at a vSAN-based HCI, there is our resiliency factor that comes into play. There's a fault tolerance factor that comes into play. So taking that into account, you need a minimum of 7 vSAN nodes, right? The same workload, you run it on a PCB system, it's 2 to 3 servers is what you need backed by a storage array, right? And in fact, there's much more headroom that is be left after running that workload. So taking that into consideration, as well as all the costs involved, I mean, there's virtualization, there's power, cooling, right? All those underlying costs put together, we could see a reduction in cost over 2.5x, right? You guys can Google this white paper. It's available to everybody. They go into detail of the analysis and how they actually did the testing as well. On similar lines with SimpliVity, with the HCI platform, SimpliVity, as Vinay mentioned, is very unique in the sense that you could have a 2-node configuration, but provide the same level of fault tolerance and resiliency that any other HCI platforms provides in the market, right? And that's how natively the SimpliVity OmniStack OS is built. Not only that, I mean, SimpliVity also has native backup and recovery, right? You don't need to invest in a third-party backup recovery tool, but it natively clones and kind of dedupe much better than any platform out in the market. So they did, ESG did another set of testing with SimpliVity compared against 3-tier architectures as well as other HCI vendors, and they could see cost savings are up to 58%, right? So either way you look at it, even if you're running VMware as your hypervisor today, you will see TCO differences with these two platform types. Now, SimpliVity has been at HP for a while, right? It was an independent platform. HP acquired them 6 years ago. So there's a lot of customers here. A raise of hands, how many use SimpliVity today? Okay, quite a few. So we want to kind of reinforce the fact that we are looking at achieving and innovating on the SimpliVity platform, right? For example, we've recently announced the support on Gen 11, which is the latest and greatest ProLiant server, as well as vSphere 8 support on the platform. And in the future, we are doing a lot of enhancements within SimpliVity to bring it as part of the Private Cloud Business Edition portfolio, where you could do one-click updates and cloud automated setup, right? And also, the HP VM Essentials that was announced today will also be supported on the SimpliVity platform sometime in summer of next year. So we are trying to future-proof the SimpliVity platform so that you guys can start leveraging a lot of the cool features that GreenLake and HP is to provide in the future. Okay, so now turning gears, just talking about the virtualization, right? a lot of you folks, I've talked to a lot of you folks in the last 6 to 8 months, ever since the licensing changes came into play. And as Antonio mentioned today, there's easily 3 to 5x increase in licensing. It has to do with the subscription model. It has to do with the bundling. It also has to do with the per core licensing model that has been changed, right? So there's a lot of increase in the overall cost of the infrastructure. So this has forced customers to look at new strategic plans, right? Either running in different runtimes. It could be virtual machines, it could be Kubernetes, or it could be even bare metal. We've seen customers move back to bare metal for the mission critical workloads so that they could save costs. And then finally, the public cloud as well, right? I mean, customers are looking at, can we house our applications in the public cloud? But then what happens is you have multiple tooling, multiple consoles to manage them all, right? So what are customers actually looking at right now? They are actually in a pause and play scenario where they're evaluating the other options, at the same time, renewing their VMware licenses for a couple of years and see what is their strategy going forward. So this is where we come in, right? In terms of modernizing your infrastructure, we are pleased to inform you that HP VM Essentials will be a core strategy in our investments, both in terms of private cloud as well as standalone software offerings, right? It is going to give you the freedom to avoid lock-in from certain virtualization vendors, but also provide you with more innovation in this space because we are actually starting from a clean slate, right? So we're trying to redo a lot of stuff that's going to make management as well as in administration of virtualization much easier. Now, at Discover earlier this year, we announced our intent to build this virtualization, right? When we announced it, it was specifically only for private cloud. And the reason for that is we could control a lot within private cloud and not have you guys do a lot of the operations. But ever since, we've got a lot of feedback, right, that this is something that the customers want to see as standalone offering as well. When I mean standalone, you could download this software from a HP website and install it on any any ProLiant servers or Alletra storage array running the virtualization stack, right? This is going to be pretty disruptive in the market because there's not many other vendors in the hypervisor space that could support external storage. As a matter of fact, over 80% of virtualized workloads run on external storage. It's not on HCI, it's not on SDS, right? It's on external storage. So supporting a hypervisor that is enterprise grade on ProLiant and Alletra is very critical for us, right? Now, when we do that, there's also questions on when are we going to support this as a software standalone on other non-HPE platforms. Let me call it non-HPE platforms, right? So this is something we are considering in the future. Of course, there's a lot of things that needs to go into place here for us to do that. But we want to get out the door initially with supporting our HP IP and platforms so that we can enable our customers to leverage that, right? So as Antonio mentioned today, the standalone software will be available first thing next year, right? Where you can download it. There will be a license to use SKU that you can start leveraging it. And I'll talk about the pricing and how this is modeled in a minute. All right, so with Morpheus, as Vinay mentioned, what it now allows us to do is not just run VMs, right, on HP VM Essentials or even for that matter VMware, because we understand a lot of customers will still want to run their mission critical workloads on VMware. But it also allows us to bring in other Kubernetes flavors into the platform and manage it from a single pane of glass. I know a lot of customers run OpenShift. It could be Rancher, right? It could be upstream Kubernetes. So you can bring those clusters in and manage it from a single pane of glass and figure out where your application needs to be provisioned, right? It could be a VM instance or it could be a container. Similarly, bare metal is another thing we are taking up as well. Bare metal is supported standalone, but we are also looking to bring that as part of our private cloud portfolio. So let's say you're running PCBE today on DHCI with virtualization. We also plan to support bare metal in the future, right? So that'll allow you to have the third runtime alongside the private cloud portfolio. Now, we've talked about reevaluating, making it agile, modernizing it, but how do you transform, right? So this is where we did our internal testing on both DHCI and SimpliVity against certain vendors in the market who compete with us. Now, the two architectural differences I talked about is very crucial, right? For example, in SimpliVity, you could have an FTT2 with 2 nodes, right? Just 2 nodes. And this is why it's so good in edge, retail, and financial spaces where you want a small form factor but run applications that could support it with good performance. SimpliVity will deliver that, right? Whereas with competition, you would need to start at 6, if not more, for the same resiliency factor, right? So it gives you a lot of hyper efficiency built into that. And again, as I mentioned, SimpliVity has world's best backup and recovery and dedupe algorithms that you don't need to even have a WAN replicator for the infrastructure. You can actually use 2 SimpliVity nodes in the same federation to replicate across. With DHCI, it's very unique because in any HCI architecture, you would need what is called as a controller VM, right? It could be even for SimpliVity, right? So in those scenarios, you would have to allocate either 4 vCPU or 8 gigs of RAM. In this day and age where all the vendors have moved to a per core model, you're basically giving up your core count, or your precious core count, to running controller VMs. In the case of DHCI architecture, there is no controller VM. It all runs as microservices in the cloud, backed by one VM that is spanned across the cluster, right? So essentially, you don't need to dedicate administrative overhead with cores that you need to pay hypervisor and OS costs, right? So it's a great level of savings that you get from that architecture. Okay, so I promise we'll talk about licensing, right? So if you look at this chart here, this is essentially any virtualization solution in the market. It could be VMware, it could be Nutanix, it could be Microsoft, right? All of them do it per core today. And it's a hockey stick, right? You start at 16 core, you're paying, let's say, $100 per month per core. It basically goes up pretty fast because the more core you have, you pay it at a 36-month or a 60-month period, it's going to be a hockey stick. Now, what we have done, as Antonio mentioned, is we have gone with the old VMware model, which they have already laid the road for us, is a per CPU socket. So our pricing will pretty much start at a way below pricing than what some of our competitors' basic model would be, right? So our pricing would be flat. It does not matter how many cores you buy in the server. You could buy a single socket, 128 core server, or you could buy a 2-socket, 256 core server, right? Our pricing would remain flat. Our goal here is to provide our customers with an alternative choice where they could move VMs from VMware or to any other, or from any other virtualization solution to HP VM Essentials, thereby reducing the cost, right? That being said, we are in a crawl, walk, run scenario, so we understand, VMware has invested decades in this technology, but we are confident at launch we will have a feature set that would pretty much be compelling to our customers. Because for most of the customers, we hardly see 50–60% of features that VMware has released is what they use, right? So it's very limited subset. So we are trying to nail down those features and provide you with more value for money, right? So that's what we're providing. There is a booth at the Solution Expo, 707 and 708, where we're showing a demo of this software today, right? It's not vaporware. It is an actual code that works. We have demos of how you can actually provision VMs, run DRS, HA, and those kind of capabilities alongside, right? So I would encourage you guys to kind of visit the booth and learn more about the product. And there's also another session tomorrow where we go into details. There'll be a demo shown. I think it's at 5 p.m. tomorrow. So ensure that you guys register and see the details of that product. Okay, so summarizing with all the 5 steps that we've seen, right? You take Cloud Physics. It's free, by the way, right? You guys can run Cloud Physics today, understand your environment, see where you could right size and bring down the entire infrastructure, right? Pricing, and then move into your modernizing stage, right? And then selecting the right virtualization. It could be HP VM Essentials, or it could even be VMware, right? Once you know the VMs that has not been used or you reduce the cores, you can move to a lower tier licensing in VMware, either from VVF to standard or VCF to VVF, if you are able to do that today, right? So that's another way to save cost. And then if you want to deploy private cloud with the architectural nativeness that we have, with both DHCI and SimpliVity, you can also save additional costs there, right? So with what we've seen in the 3-step process, you could save close to, up to 80% in overall TCO. It's a big saving. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Chris and Vinay.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Bharat. We'd like to invite Chris Markham from Cambrian Credit Union, who's a customer of both DHCI and SimpliVity and uses the private cloud business station to talk about his experience. Chris, welcome to Barcelona and welcome to this session. Maybe just give an introduction of your role at Cambrian.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Mackin. I'm the Vice President of IT Operations and Security. So underneath me is the Cybersecurity and Governance team, Systems and Networking, and IT Operations.
So you manage the whole infrastructure for Cambrian Credit Union.
Yeah, I do everything but development.
Just talk about, to help set the stage, on what was your infrastructure like before, and why did you decide to go with our DHCI architecture?
So when I started at Cambrian in 2021, there was a couple different solutions there. There was Cisco HyperFlex and SimpliVity, both being used for different things. We started having major issues with our Cisco HyperFlex platform. There was one issue where we actually had to rebuild an entire array right from bare metal, and we weren't getting the support that we needed. So what we did is we reached out to one of our local partners who works with HP. Their name is Powerland, and we just started having a conversation of what can we do to have a platform for all of our mission critical systems that we have. So the first thing that Powerland did with, in combination with HP, was install Cloud Physics to look at our environment. So not just our HyperFlex environment, but also our SimpliVity environment. So what that did is it helped us right size the servers that we had on there today, be it core count or RAM, and it helped us build out the GreenLake solution that we're currently running, which is DHCI.
So you definitely did a reevaluate your whole infrastructure, and you actually helped to lower the total TCO of your infrastructure moving forward. And as you mentioned, you also use SimpliVity. So maybe just talk about where do you use SimpliVity today, and what is the benefit of you using SimpliVity that you see in your environment?
So we use SimpliVity for our QA and dev environment. So everything that's in that environment is just pre-prod. So it's a 3-node SimpliVity cluster. We don't even use Veeam to back up our SimpliVity environment because of the robust backup that's in it today.
Oh, that's a perfect use case for SimpliVity, and we see a lot of customers using that. So thank you. And you were also fortunate and lucky to have you as our beta customer for HP VM Essentials. So Chris and his team have evaluated HP VM Essentials. So maybe you can share the feedback on your initial reaction on that.
So in the last couple of weeks, my team was given access to the beta for VM Essentials, and it was excellent. It's very, very easy to use, very intuitive, like what the president was saying today. That was exactly what my team said. The ability to create VMs, to move VMs, DRS, and that it's a single pane of glass that will even be able to bring our VMware environment in as well as we do migrations.
Yeah, that's the beauty of as I was introducing the Morpheus control plane, it allows you to bring in your existing DHCI or SimpliVity infrastructure, and when you bring in your HP VM Essentials software into your infrastructure, you can actually migrate and move the VMs from your existing infrastructure to your new infrastructure as well. So it'll really help you solve the problem for the future. What are your goals of leveraging HP VM Essentials in the future?
So our goals for using VM Essentials is to be fully migrated off of VMware by 2026. So last year or earlier this year, we were fumbling to figure out what we were going to do with VMware. because of the price increase and the lack of communication that we have from VMware in general. So when this new tool came out, it was easy for us to just make the decision. We're already partnered with HP. So for this year, our plan was to have everything migrated off of HyperFlex onto DHCI, and we're going to meet that goal. So the next goal will be to migrate off of VMware.
Perfect. I think you'll be a great initial customer understanding and figuring it out how it best serves your needs while also lowering your costs. So as we talked about in the session, right, we went through different steps about how the solution that we have, the 5 steps, you're able to reevaluate, strategize, and with our PCBE console have an agile infrastructure, but also have the ability to modernize your infrastructure and transform to everything that you need to do for the future. So you're making a smart choice by figuring out how our strategy is going and how you're going to align to manage your infrastructure moving forward with our strategy of integrating everything into a common control plane.
That's correct.
Hey, thanks a lot, Chris, for the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So I'm sure a lot of you have questions, so we would like to take some questions. So there's a mic here. I would like to invite Bharat back onto the stage so that we can answer any questions you have.
So don't be shy, because this is your time to ask us any questions about anything that you have. So happy to answer them. So can I have VM Essentials alone, or was the second part of the question?
Yes, for alone with, say, a cluster with 2 or 3 servers, or do I need Morpheus every time to control it?
Okay, so the question is, do I need VM Essentials? Can I manage VM Essentials alone, or do I need Morpheus to control 2 or 3 clusters? Okay, so let me set some stage, right? VM Essentials is probably, you can call it as Morpheus Lite, right? Where our goal is to provide something similar to a vCenter plus vSphere, right? So essentially, that's why it's essential, because it's essential to run a virtualization stack. Now, but what we're doing is, as Chris mentioned, we are also giving you the capability to bring in any VMware cluster that could be running on any hardware, not just HPE, because we understand customers would want to run some mission critical workloads on VMware still, right? So you could have VMware clusters and HP VM Essentials clusters sharing the same storage underneath it and manage it from the same console, right? If you want additional functionalities that Vinay talked about in terms of infrastructure as a code, your FinOps, you bring in other public clouds that you want to manage, then you upgrade to the full Morpheus license.
If you have a small customer, say 2 servers, and you can run it with VM Essentials.
Yes.
Yeah, so the question is, if I'm a small customer running 2 server nodes, can I run it with VM Essentials? Yes, that's correct.
I have all these VMware, I have in Vista Center.
Say that again?
I have all the functions VMware.
Yes, you will have all the functions for both VMware and vSphere Essentials.
We'll
Go
take
ahead, sorry.
question.
Yeah, hi, thanks for the talk today. Everybody used to charge per socket, and then it went to per core. When we started using the cloud, everything was free for a while, and then charges come rolling in, and they're certainly rolling in now. So how long are HPE going to underwrite the per socket charging model?
So as I said before, our goal is not to be a hypervisor vendor, right? In fact, it's based on KVM. We're not even hypervisor. It's basically the virtualization stack. And HPE, in full disclosure, we make money out of selling hardware, right? So our goal here is to provide you guys with an alternative so that we can sell more hardware. But the other thing is, we understand what uphill task it is to build something like VMware, and that's why we have 2 versions of this where, with the basic virtualization, you will have this on CPU socket model, but anything on top of it in terms of VCF, because Morpheus provides more than VCF, right? That would be based on an instance type model, which is what Morpheus does today. So let's say you buy 200 VMs, it will be based on that model for the holistic Morpheus package. But the VM Essentials itself will always be based on per CPU socket.
Okay, so when I'm buying this solution, I'm not buying just the per socket model element. I've got to buy Morpheus on top of that, and I'm not familiar with that. So you're saying that's per VM?
It's per instance is what they call. If you need those functionalities, yes.
Okay, and an instance I can read VM?
VM or containers or whatever it is, yes.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thanks for asking the question.
So first for that great announcement, but you were mentioning features like HA and DRS to compare it to VMware we used to. That made me think, is there some kind of location awareness built into the product? As for me, it's a primary use case to have our cluster stretched over different locations to build up our redundancy plans on those locations. So I need location awareness built into the product to do decisions where to migrate in the case of a failover.
Yeah, so I'll take that question. So one important thing is we want to definitely support that. It might not be available at GA, but it is part of our roadmap and our strategy to support that. Now, we did not touch about this in the presentation, but Simplicity actually has a stretch cluster configuration. Our Electra MP arrays, which are currently supported with DHCI, also support peer persistence. So we, as a storage company at the heart, for the BU that we're working on in private cloud, we have the technology to make it happen. It's about integrating that into the new hypervisor that we bring into the market. So we have heard that loud and clear, and it's part of our strategy, and we will support that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. No, I think it's very critical for us to support stretch clusters for enterprise-grade implementations. So that is part of our roadmap. And since we own storage, as Vinay mentioned, we already do that. So we just have to up-level that to the hypervisor.
And this week, Bharat and I have been traveling around Europe, right? We see the great need for having stretch cluster because a lot of customers have built their infrastructure on Simplicity with just a 2+2 configuration, and everything runs seamlessly. So we want to continue on that innovation and provide that on the HP VM Essentials as well.
Hi, I'm Bart from Belgium. I was privileged to test the VM Essentials, so thank you for that. And I can tell you, it is mature. I am really impressed of how good it actually is. So I'm gonna switch to this solution for sure. Now, the next question will be, once that you're convinced and see it on the show floor, how easy it actually is with Morpheus. What was not part of the beta program, what's your vision about, I have currently my VMware environment, how can I move my data to that KVM-based, Morpheus-based VM Essentials platform? Because it's important to get that data there as well. So how's your vision about that one, please?
I'll take it. Okay. So it's a two-pronged strategy. First of all, let me preface that there is no vendor in the market today that allows you to do live migration of VMs from one hypervisor to the other. You can look at any hypervisor vendor, they don't do that. So what we're going to do is a little bit different. One is within the product itself, within Morpheus, we have what is called as an image conversion, right? Where you can essentially pull in the VMware images, we convert VMDK into QCOW, and then the QCOW is used to provision VMs on HP VM Essentials. That you could do for a few VMs, right? If you have a farm of 1,000 VMs, you cannot, of course, do that. So for that, we have another product in our portfolio called Zerto. Zerto has a functionality called Zerto Data Mover, right? Where you could actually have a bunch of VMs in a volume collection, and then you could have snapshot and then replicate it to the other hypervisor. So kind of snapshotting and rehydrating it is a much better way of doing it because it's much faster as well, right? And then you preserve the VMware VM as is, you keep the backups on VMware as is, and you don't have to touch it, right? The third aspect is we're also going to have a HP services that will they'll essentially walk you through that process, right? So you don't have to invest your time in migrating your VMs. We will provide that service to you guys to help you go through that journey. So that's kind of the three-phased approach we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And to add to Bharat, right, the Morpheus control plane allows you to integrate your existing VMware infrastructure and also your VM Essentials, and will also have some capabilities that will help you as part of this migration strategy.
Yeah, I mean, migration is not that simple, right? You have to take care of networking, your data stores, right? Your backups. So we have to take a lot of that into account before we provide you guys with a solution that will allow you to move VMs.
Right, yeah. Thank you so much for your notes so far. So there are a couple of questions that have already been answered in regards to the licensing model per CPU, as well as the migration approach. Like you said, we've been using Morpheus to migrate from one platform to another platform. So my question here is, this DHCI, if it's a part of SimpliVity and it's going to be embedded with your VM Essentials, and how does that, the storage model, because you're saying you got to maintain two different tiers, like virtualization as well as the storage as separate tiers. So how that is going to be HCI model?
So let me take a step back, right? Yeah. So DHCI is a 3-tier architecture. You have compute and storage as separate units. SimpliVity is an all-in-one package, which is HCI. If I understand your question, you're asking how do we implement the VM Essentials on both? Is that the question? Okay, so it's the same way as you do VMware today, right? With the 3-tier architecture, you would install the KVM hypervisor or HP VM Essential in this case on those server nodes, and we'll manage them as a cluster. In SimpliVity, they already have a federation model on VMware. We're just replicating the same model to support HP VM Essentials. So this will be 2 independent platforms that you could choose which one you want. Some customers only do SimpliVity. Some customers do DHCI. Chris does both, right? So it depends on what your use cases and solutions are. But what we are providing is a single pane of glass that not only allows you to manage DHCI and SimpliVity, but also allows you to manage VMware and HP VM Essentials. So it's a multi-cluster, multi-platform support that is very unique in the value that we're providing.
Right. So even with the HP Essentials, VM Essentials, it's going to be like a 3-tier model, like a compute, storage, and networking.
If you prefer that to be in DHCI, yes. If you prefer SimpliVity, you want to talk about that?
So just to answer, so in the DHCI construct, now if you have a DHCI environment with VMware, you can actually install a new cluster with VM Essentials and leverage the same storage, right? So it's the same storage. For SimpliVity, instead of VMware, it will be VM Essentials as the underlying hypervisor, but all the capabilities of SimpliVity that customers like will continue to exist in the future as well, but with VM Essentials as the underlying hypervisor.
So it's not going to be like a software-defined storage as well as the networking?
I see what you're saying. It's not an SDS to be like, it's not vSAN.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's not vSAN, but SimpliVity is more like an SDS, but it runs on ProLiant servers, right? Because it's proprietary to us.
So the only thing is SimpliVity is technically an SDS because it leverages our own software stack, everything. It's the OmniStack virtual controller. So it will run on VM Essentials, providing the storage capabilities on top of VM Essentials. Wow. So if you can think about it, it can be the vSAN of VM Essentials moving forward.
Okay, yeah, cool. Thank you.
Afternoon. My question is based around high availability. So you've got your VM Essentials, presumably that's a virtual machine running in your environment. How do you make that machine highly available? Because it seems to me like that machine is a single point of failure. That goes down, you can't access any of your on-prem environment to bring it back up. So I just wonder what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, so that VM essentially is like any other VM, right? So we'll have DRS enabled natively that will move that VM to another node. The other thing is when we ship any node with PCBE, the VM, we call as Data Services Connector VM, gets actually burnt on every server. We just don't use it on every server, right? It's only used on one server per cluster. When there is a disaster, the other DSC VM comes up, and then we go from there. So that's natively already, even the existing architecture from VMware does that today. So it's not new that we're doing. We're just basically leveraging a new container within that VM to support VM Essentials.
Perfect.
Thank you. Any other questions that we can answer? All right, if nothing, and if you're shy, we're always available after this to answer your questions. I really appreciate your time today and coming and listening to us. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.